Oh my God, it's the coolest thing ever. Hey guys, have you heard of Goldbelly? Well, check this out. It's this amazing site where they ship the most iconic, famous foods from restaurants across the country, anywhere nationwide. I've never found a more perfect gift than food. They ship Chicago deep dish pizza, New York bagels, Maine lobster rolls, and even Ina Garten's famous cakes. Seriously. So if you're looking for a gift for the food lover in your life, head to goldbelly.com and get 20% off your first order with promo code GIFT.
Last week was our first playoff game, and my plaque psoriasis was so itchy under all my gear. Sometimes just thinking about scratching could take me out of the moment. And then my doctor told me I could get clearer skin with a pill called Otezla.
Otezla apremilast is a prescription medicine used to treat adult patients with plaque psoriasis for whom phototherapy or systemic therapy is appropriate. Otezla can help you get clearer skin after just 4 months.
Okay, ready for the next game. Talking to my doctor about a pill was a total game changer.
Don't use Otezla if you're allergic to it. Get medical help right away if you have trouble breathing or swallowing, swelling of the face, lips, tongue, throat, or arms. Severe diarrhea, nausea or vomiting, depression, suicidal thoughts, or weight loss can happen. Tell your doctor if any of these occur and if you have a history of depression or suicidal thoughts. Live in the moment. Ask your doctor about Otezla. Call 1-844-4-OTEZLA or visit Otezla.com for prescribing info about cost, and more.
Welcome back, True Crime Army. I am your host, Margot, and this is Military Murder, a show where I focus on crimes committed by military members and veterans. But don't worry, you don't have to know anything about the military to listen. You just have to head straight to the true crime genre wherever you like to watch TV. And if that's you, welcome home. I know that in last week's episode, I said that I would be releasing an update for the Amanda Gonzalez case, but it has been delayed. I'm hopeful that it will be out this year. Additionally, I will probably spend the rest of the year closing the loop on cases that I have covered in the last 5 years that finally have a resolution. That being said, today's episode is a compilation of cases involving extremism. It's a wave of cases over a decade that really put a bad spotlight on a few lone wolf extremists who infiltrated the ranks. Join me today as I tell you a few cases involving soldiers all the way from Italy serving in the U.S. forces to airmen in California. Now, let's dig in.
Military murder is an independent project and is not endorsed by the Department of Defense or any military component. The views expressed are those of the host. The content of this podcast is not meant to be legal or medical advice. Warning, this episode contains graphic details of murder and is not suitable for young listeners. Listener discretion is advised.
Before I begin today, I am going to give you a bit of a history lesson. I mean, Myrtle wrote it into the script and it was all new to me. For the history nerds in the crowd, I know that you'll enjoy it. According to their official Army.mil website, the always lethal, agile, and combat-ready 173rd Airborne Brigade, also known as Sky Soldiers, is the U.S. Army's contingency response force in Europe, providing rapid forces to the United States, European, Africa, and Central Command's areas of responsibility. Forward based in Italy and Germany, the brigade routinely trains alongside NATO allies and partners to build interoperability and strengthen the alliance. A brief history of the 173rd goes back more than 100 years, all the way when the unit was first established in 1917. They were deployed to France the following year as part of the 87th Division. Then the unit was demobilized in 1919 before being redesignated during World War II as the 87th Recon Troop. I thought this was interesting. The name Sky Soldiers was coined by nationalist Chinese paratroopers in '63, when the unit was activated on Okinawa, Japan. According to the unit's official website, the name the Chinese soldiers gave them was Tien Bien, which translates to, quote, Sky Soldiers. The brigade was the first major unit of the U.S. Army to see service in Vietnam, conducting the one and only combat parachute jump of the war. The unit remained in the Vietnam Sea in combat for more than 6 years during its time in the conflict. The 173rd earned 14 campaign streamers and 4 unit citations. Sky Soldiers who served in Vietnam earned 13 Medals of Honor before the unit was inactivated in 1972. It was reactivated in the year 2000 to serve in the European theater. On March 26, 2003, the 173rd sent almost 1,000 Sky soldiers parachuting into Iraq in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom 1. One soldier was awarded the Silver Star during that operation. In 2005, they were sent to the Pakistani border in Afghanistan in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. A total of 5 Silver Stars were awarded to Sky soldiers for gallantry in battle during OEF 6. After they redeployed to Italy in 2006, the brigade became the 173rd Airborne Brigade Combat Team. They went back to Afghanistan in 2007 on an extended deployment where the 173rd continuing to display uncommon valor with one soldier earning a Medal of Honor, one received a Distinguished Service Cross, and a mind-blowing 32 Silver Stars were awarded. The 173rd went back to Afghanistan 2 more times in 2009 and 2012. When they completed their last rotation, the unit was redesignated the 173rd Airborne Brigade. All this information is to point out that this unit has a distinguished history of valor and bravery. But if you've been around anyone in the military, you know the old saying, one can wipe out 1,000 attaboys. Leading up to the deployment to Turkey in June of 2020, an event would tarnish all this history in an ugly way by one seriously messed up soldier. Back in 2018, a 20-year-old from Louisville, Kentucky named Ethan Melzer joined the U.S. Army through the Delayed Enlistment Program. In the fall of 2019, after he completed boot camp and training to become a paratrooper and infantryman, Private Melzer was assigned to the 173rd in Vicenza, Italy as a Sky soldier. I mean, what a score to get that as your first assignment after boot camp. But let's change some terminology first. Ethan Melzer didn't join the U.S. Army, he basically infiltrated it. When he went into the Delayed Enlistment Program, Melzer was already a member of an extremist organization called Order of the Nine Angels, or O9A. I'll get into the specifics of this group in a few. Before he infiltrated the U.S. Army, Melzer had attempted to self-initiate himself into O9A by committing a violent crime. In 2017, while he was still living in Louisville, Kentucky, he shot a marijuana dealer in the arm. According to the article that I read, Melzer was a low-level drug dealer in his neighborhood. I was unable to find any information as to the legal repercussions of shooting a drug dealer in that incident in 2017. Meanwhile, in the months that he had been in Vicenza, 21-year-old Melzer was not adjusting to Army life, and he was having a hard time fitting in with members of the unit. He was spending all his spare time frequenting bars around the base and spending a ton of time online. His online time focused on a chat room, which I will not be naming. This chat room was frequented by groups like O9A, and Melzer's username was Etil Regad, which some think is a word jumble for elite dagger or light dagger. Specifically, Melzer was talking to members of a subgroup called Rape Vasen. Vasen is a German word. Vasen translates from German as weapons. So their name was literally Rape Weapons. In March of 2020, the world was just realizing that COVID-19 was a thing. Due to all the lockdowns, a lot of people turned to the internet to spend time and connect with others since they couldn't meet in person. Melzer was already active in various satanic Nazi chat rooms frequented by O9A and Rape Waffen Division affiliates. I'm having a really hard time saying Waffen in German. It's Waffen. Okay, so if y'all heard me, I was talking about a satanic Nazi chat room. I need to break down what this O9A and its subgroups that they call Nexians are. O9A, as I said earlier, is the Order of the Nine Angels. At their base, this far-right group believes in a mashup of satanic worship, vampirism, death worship. Okay, let me catch my breath. I'm not done yet. It also involves white nationalism, fascism, and extreme violence. That's just a lovely subgroup of people, isn't it? It was founded in the early 1970s by a British neo-Nazi named David Mayet. The subgroup Rape Waffen Division follows O9A ideology at its core, but also promotes dehumanization of women that includes sharing videos of women being sexually assaulted, murdered, and suffering extreme violence. The founder of this subgroup publicly called for the culling, which literally means the practice of human sacrifice. That's as deep as I want to get into that part of the story, because as Myrtle was researching this, she was like, you know what? I don't want to have to burn sage in my office and do a complete wipe of my hard drive to get rid of the ick. All right. In April of 2020, the Sky Soldiers received orders to deploy to Turkey to provide security at an isolated and sensitive military installation. The unit started weeks of training and preparation for their mobilization. They practiced different scenarios regarding threats at the base and how to respond to potential attacks from terrorists. Part of the training included classified information as well as detailed information about the base that they were going to be guarding. The soldiers, including Melzer, were provided with detailed information about the mission of the base's layout, and the force protection measures that were already in place regarding security. But Melzer decided he was not going to keep everything a secret. Melzer jumped on an encrypted discussion board and started sending messages to members of O9A and Rape Waffen about the upcoming deployment. He included information about the location of the base in Turkey, when and how the unit would be getting there, and the security posture at the base. He had one thing on his mind: the death and destruction of his fellow soldiers. Melzer's objective was to cause a mass casualty event in a jihadi attack to take place during their deployment, but it wasn't going to be Melzer pulling off the attack. He was providing information for other terrorist organizations to attack, knowing full well that he could possibly be killed in those attacks. Melzer wrote about his willingness to die, saying, quote, "Who gives a f***? It would be another war. I would have died successfully, because another 10-year war in the Middle East would definitely leave a mark," end quote. In another post, he said that in giving up this information, he was, quote, "risking his literal free life," end quote, then added that he was expecting results. Now, this part gets me. Apparently, defending freedom and serving his country didn't have any meaning. He sent a message stating that his life would be absolutely meaningless and the amount of shit it would cause. And by it, he meant the attack. He then said that the attack would result in a new war and that it would cause a mass goal, which someone else in the chat explained to mean a mass casualty. Beginning around the second week of May 2020, Melzer sent more electronic messages with a promise that he would pass on any information about the deployment to a supposed member of Al-Qaeda. He stated in a message under the moniker Ethan Melzer that he felt that his military training, survival, and links to the other groups would be of use to O9A. About a week later, he sent more messages to the supposed Al-Qaeda member, and this time he sent specifics like how many soldiers would be deploying, the location of the facility where they would be deployed to, and the types of weapon that they were going to have on their persons, and even specifics about the facility's ability to defend itself and surveillance resources. And yet another post stated, "If you know anyone in Turkey, tell them this info there," end quote. Then Melzer sent another promise that he would send more details once he arrived in country. He told them that he would include pictures and the frequency and channel that the army would be using on their radios. This was to ensure that Melzer gave Al-Qaeda enough information to really maximize on the success of an attack by the terrorist organization. He told them how an attack could wipe out his unit's fire teams, leaving the base defenseless. Oh my freaking goodness. What is wrong with people? But thank God for infiltration, because it doesn't just happen in the bad way. Sometimes the good guys infiltrate those bad chat rooms. And little did Melzer know, one of the people in the chat was an FBI informant. Yes, this FBI informant alerted everyone that Melzer was out there telling whoever would listen that he was willing to give up information that would bring massive death and destruction to his very own unit. The Sky Soldiers were scheduled to deploy on May 30th, 2020. As they were waiting for the buses to take them to the airport, authorities descended on the soldiers. They yanked Melzer out and whisked him away. They took his phone and found a draft message on it from his alter ego, Ethan Melzer, where he was responding to questions affirming his commitment to the ideology of O9A. Now talk about a deployment starting out with a lot of crazy excitement. Anyway, Melzer was brought by the FBI to the U.S. Department of Justice, Southern District of New York office on June 10, 2020. There, he was formally arrested and charged. The allegation stated that he willfully and knowingly combined, conspired, confederated, and agreed together and with each other to kill nationals of the United States. Basically, Melzer admitted that he plotted with the enemy and was a traitor to his very own country. The prosecutor said at the time of his arrest that he was inspired by a, get this, quote, a diabolical cocktail of ideologies laced with hate and violence, end quote. That's a good way to put it. Melzer's charges included 1. Conspiring to murder U.S. nationals in violation of 18 U.S.C. 2332 Bravo, and it carries a maximum sentence of life in prison. 2. Attempting to murder U.S. nationals in violation of 18 U.S.C. 2332 Bravo 1, carrying a maximum sentence of 20 years. 3. Conspiring to murder U.S. military service members in violation of 18 U.S.C. 1117, which carries a maximum sentence of life in prison. 4. Attempting to murder U.S. military service members in violation of 18 U.S.C. 1114, another 20-year max. 5. Attempting to provide and providing material support to terrorists in violation of 18 U.S.C. 2339 Alpha that carries a maximum sentence of 15 years. And 6. Conspiring to murder and maim in a foreign country, violation of 18 U.S.C. 956, which carries a maximum sentence of life in prison. In a court filing, Melzer's defense team denied that he was a member of O9A and that anything he posted online claiming that he was a member was, quote, bluster, falsities designed to impress the people he was communicating with online, end quote. His defense continued stating that Melzer believed that O9A was weird and pretty much a cult. It also claimed that his beliefs were polar opposite with that of O9A. Melzer pled guilty and was sentenced to a whopping 45 years in prison on March 3, 2023. At the time of his sentencing, the courtroom was full of uniformed soldiers from the 173rd Airborne Brigade who came to testify as to the harm their former brother-in-arms caused their deployment. U.S. Attorney Audrey Strauss, who headed the Southern District of New York at the time, said, quote, Ethan Melzer, a private in the U.S. Army, was the enemy within, end quote. Another U.S. attorney named Sam Adelsberg wrote in a sentencing memo, quote, Ethan Melzer infiltrated the U.S. Army in service of a neo-Nazi white supremacist and jihadist group. U.S. Attorney Damian Williams for the Southern District of New York said, quote, he used his membership in the military to pursue an appalling goal, the brutal murder of his fellow U.S. service members in a carefully plotted ambush. By unlawfully disclosing his unit's location, strength, and armaments to other O9A members and jihadists, in furtherance of this ambush, Melzer traitorously sought to attack the very soldiers he was entrusted to protect. Today's sentence makes clear that Melzer's brazen actions backfired and that this office, along with our partners in law enforcement and the military, will work tirelessly to bring traitors like Melzer to justice and to protect the safety and integrity of our armed services, end quote. The FBI Assistant Director William Sweeney Jr. said, quote, Melzer declared himself to be a traitor against the United States and described his own conduct as tantamount to treason. We agree. He turned his back on his country and his unit while aligning himself with members of the neo-Nazi group O9A. Today, he is in custody and facing a lifetime of service behind bars, which is appropriate given the severity of the conduct we allege today, end quote. So we don't need to argue about whether this guy was a massive POS or not, because the answer is he is or was or whatever. And the good thing is that he won't have a shot at parole until he's around 70. But you know what? Melzer was not the first service member to turn on his country. And sadly, he might not be the last. For this next part, I will be referring to Fort Cavazos as Fort Hood, since that was the name of the installation at the time that this incident took place. Today's episode is sponsored by Acorns, and April is Financial Literacy Month, an entire month dedicated to taking control of your money. Because honestly, no one really taught me how to manage money growing up. I didn't learn about investing until I was well into adulthood. But what I love about Acorns is that it makes it easy to start saving and investing for your future in just 5 minutes. I know, April is an entire month, but you don't need an entire month to learn. You don't need to be an expert. Acorns recommends a diversified portfolio that matches you and your goals. You can start with just your spare change, and you don't need a lot of time. Setup takes just 5 minutes because I know that your time is precious. And if financial wellness has ever felt out of reach, Acorns makes it simple, giving your money a chance to grow without the overwhelm. Personally, using Acorns gave me the confidence to stop putting it off and just start. And that peace of mind is completely worth it. Sign up now and join over 14 million all-time customers who've already saved and invested over $25 billion with a B dollars with Acorns. Head to acorns.com/militarymama or download the Acorns app to get started today. Paid non-client endorsement. Compensation provides incentive to positively promote Acorns. Tier 1 compensation provided. Investing involves risk. Acorns Advisors, LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor. View important disclosures at acorns.com/militarymama.
Starting a business can seem like a daunting task, unless you have a partner like Shopify. They have the tools you need to start and grow your business. From designing a website to marketing to selling and beyond, Shopify can help with everything you need. There's a reason millions of companies like Mattel, Heinz, and Allbirds continue to trust and use them. With Shopify on your side, turn your big business idea into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
At about 5:30 p.m. on July 26, 2011, a store employee at Guns Galore in Killeen, Texas, notified police that a customer had come into the store earlier acting strangely and made some odd purchases. Now, let me just pause right here. I feel like all of the Fort Hood incidents or the Fort Cavazos incidents start with a trip to Guns Galore. Like, whoa, my goodness, this is insane. The employee said that the man who made a strange purchase kept his sunglasses on the entire time, and he purchased 6 one-pound cans of various kinds of smokeless gunpowder. The employee noted that the man buying the gunpowder didn't have a single clue about what he was trying to get. When he brought the canisters to the checkout counter, he literally asked the clerk, "What is smokeless powder?" This type of gunpowder is primarily used to reload ammunition and is typically bought in 2-pound cans. And people who purchase it are people who reload and know what they're getting. They also normally only buy 1 canister at a time, and if they did buy more than one, they would buy the same type. The 6 canisters were a mix of slow-burning and fast-burning gunpowder. And the thing is that combining them can create a highly volatile substance. Besides not having a single clue about what he was buying, the man wasn't picking up any other supplies that people usually buy in conjunction to gunpowder. Things like bullets, primers. The employee also reported that the man purchased 3 boxes of shotgun shells and 1 extended magazine for a handgun. And the thing is that the man paid the $250 bill in cash, but booked it out of there before the clerk could get him his change or even a receipt. And, maybe a regular gun clerk would not really, be too concerned. But the thing is that this clerk was a retired Killeen Police Department sergeant named Greg Ebert. So what did Greg do? Well, he called an old buddy at the station and told him about the suspicious purchase. It wasn't illegal to get anything that man had picked up, but Greg's old cop radar was pinging, and he knew something wasn't right. In addition to the weird stuff I have already mentioned, the thing was that the customer showed up to the store in a taxi. Weird. Then, when he was in the store, he had acted pretty rude to Greg, and it didn't sit right with the former police officer. The following day, the man who had purchased the gunpowder, shotgun shells, and handgun magazine went to a military equipment surplus store and asked for an Army combat uniform. In addition to the uniform, he wanted a name patch bearing the name Smith and unit patches that people might wear if they were, stationed at Fort Hood. Well, lucky for the cops, they were hot on this guy's trail ever since he left Guns Galore the night prior, and they followed him to where he went afterwards, which it turned out that this guy was staying at some sort of motel. So, once they learned where this guy was staying, 2 plainclothes detectives along with an Army CID agent went to the hotel to find out the name of the man and what room he was staying in. As they were looking at guest records, with permission, of course, of the motel manager, the 2 Killeen detectives saw a taxi pull up. and all of a sudden, a man matching the description that retired Sergeant Greg Ebert had given. And now he was approaching the cab with an overfilled backpack. Concerned that this guy might have explosives and guns in the backpack, they drew their weapons and ordered the man to stop and put his hands up. The man initially complied, but then he slowly began to lower his arm as if he was going to make a move. The law enforcement officers moved in, took the man to the ground, got the backpack, and then cuffed him. On his person, they found a Tennessee ID card in his pocket that had the name Asher Pluto. The man was placed in the back of a squad car and read his Miranda rights. Once they finished Mirandizing him, the man admitted that his name was not Asher Pluto. It was actually Naser Jason Abdo, and that he was a 21-year-old private first class from Fort Campbell, Kentucky. What the heck? Now, you might recall earlier I said that this was happening near Fort Hood. Okay, so when they run this name, they find out that Abdo had warrants out for his arrest from the Fort Campbell, Kentucky Provost Marshal Office. This guy was actually AWOL from Fort Campbell, and he was also wanted for possessing sexually explicit material of children on his work computer at the base. As investigators went through his hotel room, they discovered the smokeless gunpowder, 2 pressure cookers, clocks, and the shotgun shells. They also found an article titled, quote, "Make a bomb in the kitchen of your mom," end quote. Additionally, they found the uniform that he purchased with the Fort Hood patches on it. Naser Jason Jamal Abdo was born on April 1st, 1990 in Dallas, Texas, to parents Carlissa Moreland and Jamal Rateb Abdo. He joined the Army in 2009 and was due to deploy the next year to Afghanistan. However, before deploying, he applied for conscientious objector status in 2010 due to his religious beliefs. Abdo was raised as a Muslim and believed that his religion prohibited him from going to war. And the thing about this guy is that a military review board had actually approved his separation from the Army, but that was delayed after the explicit material was found on his computer. Abdo felt that the Army had set him up and was only charging him with a crime because he wanted to get out as a conscientious objector. And the thing about Abdo is that we're glad he got caught because he had some pretty big plans. Abdo, it turns out, originally planned on kidnapping a high-ranking officer at Fort Campbell and executing this person on camera. He decided to change targets when local officials found out that he had made purchases at a gun store in Kentucky. Over the 4th of July weekend, Abdo went AWOL and then made his way down to Killeen, Texas. Thankfully for Greg from Guns Galore, this guy was stopped. Abdo was charged with 1 count of attempted use of a weapon of mass destruction, 1 count of attempted murder of officers or employees of the United States, and 4 counts of possession of a weapon in furtherance of a federal crime of violence. Abdo was put on trial at the U.S. District Court in Waco. During the trial, he shouted out, "Nidal Hassan, Fort Hood, 2009, which was a reference to a rampage in November of 2009 that was carried out by Army psychiatrist Major Nidal Malik Hassan. And you might recall that that rampage left 13 dead and 32 wounded. And as written in the script by Myrtle, I guess I'll be doing a deep dive into Hassan's case next year. That's going to be a rough one. Abdo was found guilty on every count and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He appealed his conviction in 2013, but his appeal was denied. Today, Abdo is 34 years old and is serving his time at the Florence Ad Max United States Prison in Florence, Colorado.
This episode is brought to you by Netflix. 3 couples, 4 vacations, a lot to unpack. Watch The 4 Seasons, a new series starring comedy favorites Tina Fey, Steve Carell, Will Forte, Coleman Domingo, and more in a hilarious and heartfelt love letter to long-term relationships. Based on the original Alan Alda film. Watch The 4 Seasons, streaming now only on Netflix.
In 2019, before joining the Army, Cole Bridges, also known as Cole Gonzalez, started researching and spending a lot of time online reading propaganda that promoted the violent ideology of jihadists. Bridges Gonzalez, who was from Stowe, Ohio, started posting his support for ISIS and jihad on his social media accounts shortly after that time. By October of 2020, he was a 19-year-old private first class and had been serving in the United States Army for about a year with the 3rd Infantry Division stationed at Fort Stewart, Georgia, as a cavalry scout. It was about this time when he started sending messages back and forth with someone who he thought was an ISIS supporter. This person told Bridges Gonzalez that he was connected with ISIS fighters in the Middle East. Bridges Gonzalez started telling his new friend that he was frustrated with the U.S. military and that he was down to help ISIS. He learned that the ISIS fighters were planning attacks and provided his online friends with parts of an army training manual and guidance about military combat tactics. Now, this guy had only been in the Army for a year, and he was only a private first class. So I'm not sure what extent he knew about tactics. However, Bridges Gonzalez shoveled out whatever information he could with full knowledge that this alleged ISIS group was looking at targets on U.S. soil. He made sure that he included details about targets they could potentially hit in New York City. 2 months after Bridges Gonzalez started chatting with his new online buddy, he upped the ante by providing his friend with directions on how to perform attacks on U.S. troops stationed in the Middle East. He provided things such as diagrams of specific maneuvers that he intended to help the ISIS fighters max out the death count and destruction that they wanted to inflict on U.S. forces. Bridges Gonzalez also advised them on the best way to fortify their own ISIS camps to be able to make surprise attacks on U.S. Special Forces. He went so far as to tell them where to place explosives in structures to maximize the lethality. By January of 2021, Bridges Gonzalez was sending videos of himself standing in front of an ISIS flag wearing his army body armor and making motions with his hands that were symbolic of support for ISIS. A week later, he sent his online friends another video where he read a propaganda speech through a voice manipulator that supported the upcoming ambush that he had helped to plan. Here's the thing, everybody. The entire time that Bridges Gonzalez was chatting with his online buddy, he was totally clueless that it was an actual FBI online covert employee, also known as an OCE. The OCE was posing as an ISIS supporter, and Bridges Gonzalez never had a clue that he was actually talking to the FBI the entire time. I'm sure it will come as no surprise that Bridges Gonzalez rolled over pretty quickly and pled guilty on June 14, 2023. He was sentenced in October of 2024 to 168 months in prison, with 10 years of supervised release tacked onto the end. Cole James Bridges Gonzalez is now 24 years old. That's it. He's only 24 years old. He's 24 years old and serving out his time at the Brooklyn Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, New York. The Federal Inmate Finder website does not list a release date, but if my math is correct, he has about 12 and a half years left on his sentence, which would have him getting out sometime in 2037. That's my best guess. I don't know if he will receive credit for time served, but we can assume he probably will.
Ladies, you'll end up shopping for your guy's deodorant, right? So try Degree's Original Cool Rush. You see, last year, Degree changed the formula, and men were mad. One guy even started a petition. So Degree admitted they messed up and brought the Original Cool Rush scent back. It's clean, crisp, and actually smells like someone you want to cuddle. And it's in Walmart, Target, and other stores now for under $4. So toss one in your cart and find out why it's the best-selling men's antiperspirant for the last decade. Degree Cool Rush is back, and it smells like victory.
We off? 30 seconds of carefree bliss.
Oof, like wind in your hair carefree.
Oh, like using Clorox Disinfecting All-Purpose Cleaner in the home carefree.
Yes.
Like dog slobbing on the coffee table and cleaning it with Clorox Carefree.
He's on a roll now.
Spit toothpaste on the faucet.
You got it. You got it.
Peanut butter on the light switch.
Oh, spritz, spritz.
Spritz, spritz. Clorox, man. Clean feels good.
Okay, we're back.
Use as directed.
The last case that I will cover in this episode is known as the Boogaloo murder, and it took place in 2020. Originally, the Boogaloo was a dance that was popular in the 1960s in the U.S. However, extremists took the word and changed it to mean the coming of a second civil war between Americans. The Boogaloo movement started in online discussions in the early 2000s on a website's weapons and politics board. It was spreading widely in 2019 through the use of memes and came together as an organized online presence in 2020. I know what you're thinking. Memes? Aren't these fun pictures with hilarious captions? No, not those. These memes promoted violence. The ones that Boogaloo members shared focused on being anti-law enforcement and anti the use of force by police. They were against gun control laws. They were against the public health response to the COVID-19 pandemic. They were against the social justice protests concerning police violence, which really all of this just seems counterintuitive. You know, all of the hot topics from the last few years, that's what these people were all anti. The Boogaloo movement evolved rapidly from a niche internet forum into a full-blown mainstream mobilization movement. The Boogaloo movement attracted people in the United States like white supremacists, members of the militia, and neo-Nazis. I'm sure you all recall 2020. Why was that such a weird year? Well, you probably recall the 2020 incident in Minneapolis, Minnesota, when George Floyd was killed by a police officer. Well, immediately after that response, protests against police violence followed and began the Black Lives Matter movement. The protests took place all over the country, including in Oakland, California. Boogaloos were already anti-police, and now they figured it was a perfect time to speed up their dream, the final conflict, the quote, the Boogaloo, a second civil war. It triggered the one and only time the Boogaloo faction sparked an act of domestic terrorism. This act of domestic terrorism involved, you guessed it, a member of the armed forces of the United States. This time, it was someone in the United States Air Force, a 32-year-old staff sergeant named Stephen Carrillo. Carrillo was stationed at Travis Air Force Base, California, which lies between Sacramento and San Francisco. It was when he was stationed here that he met fellow followers of the Boogaloos in a Facebook group dedicated to the Boogaloo rhetoric. Carrillo's co-conspirator's name was Robert Alvin Justice Jr. He was posting his rhetoric months before the BLM movement. By February of 2020, Justice wrote that he had a, quote, bloodlust for police. Then, on May 27th, he wrote, quote, speak to cops in a language they understand, end quote. This line was posted under an image of a police officer being shot. On May 28th, during one exchange posted in a Boogaloo group, Carrillo wrote, quote, it's on our coast now. This needs to be nationwide. It's a great opportunity to target the specialty soup boys. Keep that energy going, end quote. Then he asked if anyone was down to boog. Justice replied, let's boogie. The following night, Carrillo and Justice climbed into a plain white van loaded with bomb-making materials and guns and drove to Oakland. They drove just outside of San Francisco. Carrillo was armed with a homemade AR-15 rifle. They were hoping to cause more chaos during the protests at the Dellums Federal Building. As they drove past the building at 9:45 p.m., Carrillo slid the side door open and started firing. Two federal officers who were assigned to protect the building during the BLM protests were open targets. 53-year-old Protective Services Officer David Patrick Underwood was shot and killed. A second officer was left in critical condition from the hail of gunfire. Carrillo went back to his home where he was tracked down on June 6, 2020, which, if you're tracking, is about a week after the officers were shot. As two sheriff's deputies approached Carrillo's house, Carrillo texted his brother Evan, telling him to give his fiancé $50,000 and told him, I love you, bro. Evan was worried that his brother was sending him some sort of weird suicide note, so he wrote back, think about the ones you love. Carrillo could hear the sheriff's department deputies talking as they approached his house and sent a second message out. This time, it was to members of a Boogaloo Misha faction that he had joined. He told them, kid up and get here, because the police were about to get him. He then said, take them out when they're coming in. Carrillo then climbed up a steep embankment and opened fire with a silenced automatic rifle and threw a homemade pipe bomb at the deputies. After exchanging gunfire with them, he killed 38-year-old Santa Cruz County Sheriff Sergeant Damon Gutzweiler. A second deputy, Alex Spencer, was seriously wounded by shrapnel from the bomb and was shot, but the bullet was stopped by his body armor. Carrillo then ran. He carjacked a vehicle in an attempt to get away, although he had been wounded in the shootout. Carrillo only drove a short distance before ditching the first car and trying unsuccessfully to carjack another person. It was then that Carrillo was caught by police. Cell phone footage captured the moment that he was taken into custody. He was shouting, "This is what I came to fight. I'm sick of these GD police." When officials recovered the first carjacked car, they found that Carrillo had written on the hood with his own blood. They found the following words: "Boog, I became unreasonable and stopped the duopoly." After killing 2 law enforcement officers and wounding 2 others, Stephen Carrillo was finally stopped. He would have continued to kill cops if he hadn't been stopped. And here's the rub. Stephen Carrillo was actually a member of the security forces in the Air Force. So he was, no kidding, an Air Force cop. Stephen Carrillo wasn't just security forces. Carrillo had recently completed Raven training. Ravens are elite security forces with special training to secure sensitive cargo and traveling dignitaries who are aboard aircraft. In 2022, Carrillo pled guilty to state charges for the murder of Sergeant Gutzweiler. That same year, he pled guilty for the murder of Officer Underwood and the attempted murder of his partner. And by the way, he was charged by the state and also the feds. Ultimately, Carrillo was sentenced to 41 years in prison on federal charges, but received life in prison without the possibility of parole from the state. When Carrillo was moved from the courthouse to Mule Creek State Prison in Santa Cruz, officers escorted him using Sergeant Gutzweiler's handcuffs to restrain him during transport. So let me tell you a little bit about the victims in this last case. 53-year-old David Patrick Underwood grew up in Contra Costa County in California. He was known as someone who truly loved his family, friends, and his job. And he also loved cars. He owned 3 Datsun Zs. I don't even know what those are, so I'm going to have to Google those after. And loved taking them out and driving them. Tributes on social media testified to his positivity, compassion, and empathy, and said that his shining smile would be missed. A high school friend wrote that she would miss a good, hardworking man and good friend. Hundreds of people turned out for Officer Underwood's memorial. 38-year-old Sergeant Damon Gutzweiler had worked for the Santa Cruz County Sheriff's Office for 14 years. He grew up in the county he served and attended Cabrillo College. Sergeant Gutzweiler left behind a 2-year-old son and his wife Favi, who was pregnant with their second child when he was killed. He was eulogized at his memorial by his former partner who said, quote, "I never saw him have a bad day, even when he was due one. He was better than most of us. He was incredibly patient, gentle in a way that is rare in this world," end quote. Thousands of fellow law enforcement officers, friends, and family attended Sergeant Gutzweiler's memorial service. In 2022, a park in Santa Cruz, formerly known as Willowbrook Park, was renamed in his honor. All right, True Crime Army, I just want to say thank you for joining me the week of Thanksgiving. I am forever grateful for your commitment to downloading and listening to my episodes, and hey, maybe you'll get to share them with your family this week. Good luck to all of you as you travel near and far as you gather with those you love. Remember, be kind, and sometimes it's best to just smile and nod. I want to give a shout out to Myrtle, who put this episode together and researched and wrote the script. And she also committed me to doing that Fort Hood 2009 massacre, which is really daunting. All right, my sources for today's episode include the 173rd Air Brigade homepage, various Department of Justice press releases, articles in Rolling Stone magazine, the BBC, NBC News, ABC News, Killeen Daily Herald, Ancestry.com, KTVU, KSBW, PBS, and NPR, and a periodical from the Combating Terrorism Center at West Point. Military Murder was produced by Mama Margot Productions. The music was created by Tie-Ups. Until next time, remember, you never really know what someone is capable of, so remain vigilant always. You have a fabulous week, and I'll keep digging to bring you another military murder story next week.
Mama's working on her podcast. I don't want to.